Hey, how you doing? Today I want to talk about the 4 portrait photography lighting setups that I think you should know. Now, obviously, these aren't the only lighting setups you should know, but I'd call these the fundamental portrait lighting setups because these are the ones that are going to take you a long way as far as producing professional style portraiture and headshots, if that's what you want to do. Okay, let's get started with the first one, and that is the 45-45. That's what I call it. It's a standard portrait lighting setup, and if you've just got one light, that's great because this is where it all starts. This is the beginning of portrait lighting. All right, the one light in the 45-45 position, and let me just describe that. That is the position that is approximately, it's to one side of your subject. Okay, it's not like a light directly in front like you'd have like on top of your camera, like when you're using a flash. This is where you've got the light positioned just slightly off center, maybe about 45 degrees off of the camera to subject axis, and it's about 45 degrees off to one side, either this side or this side, and it's coming in at about 45 degrees from that light to the subject's face, so it's pointed down towards the subject. And that is the basic portrait lighting setup. This just happens to be one of the most useful positions to set up your key light or your main light, and that is the 45-45 position. Now I've got several videos that talk about what you can do with your one light, with your key light. There are 5 distinct portrait lighting patterns. These are traditional portrait lighting patterns. I'll go ahead and place a link to that video up here, and you can go and check that out to really get into the details of what you can do with that one light. But for the purposes of this video, yeah, just take that one light, put it in that 45-45 position, about 45 degrees off of the camera to subject axis, and point it down about 45 degrees to the subject's face. All right, so now you know what to do with your key light, with your main light. The next setup is a key fill combination. Okay, that's where you've got your key light set up, and now you're bringing in a second light to fill in the shadows on the shadow side of the subject. So if your key light is over here, it's creating shadows on this side of your subject. So you bring in a fill light, and that fill light will fill in those shadows as much as you want to fill in those shadows, and that helps reduce shadows on that side of the face. So you're reducing contrast from one side of the face to the other. You're widening that transition from light to shadow on this side, and that gives you sort of a softer look to your portraits. Now, there are all sorts of discussions about formulas and ratios as far as like how strong to have your key light versus your fill light. But really, my advice is just bring in enough fill to give the picture, that look that you want. And of course, you don't have to actually do this with a second light. If you don't have a second light, just bring in a reflector, bring in some kind of a foam core board or something. Just bring it in really close and kind of see how much bounce you're getting off of that main light to help fill in those shadows. And if it's filling in too much, then start moving it farther away. You can't move it too far; it's not going to have any effect. But with a reflector, just between just right out of camera frame and a couple of feet, and you can really control the look of those shadows. Okay, so the next lighting setup I want to talk about, I call cross lighting. Now, a lot of people call it cross lighting. I'm not really sure if it has a name or if there's some other more technically accurate name for this, but we'll call it cross lighting, and that is where you've got one light. Let's just stick with the main scenario again. All right, so you've got your key light, and you've got another light running opposite to that. So from the camera to subject axis, if you imagine that as a line, you're using your 2 lights to create a diagonal line across the subject. So really what that second light does coming in from behind and to the side of your subject, it's giving you a nice sort of a rim light, maybe even a hair light, and it's adding some interest, and it's breaking your subject out from the background a little bit, especially if your background's kind of dark. You've got that key light over here, you've got a lot of light over here. The background and the shadow side of your subject can go a little dark. If you have that second light coming in from this side, you're going to create some highlights on this side of your subject. So it sort of breaks them out from the background. Some say it gives it a little more of a 3-dimensional effect. Cross lighting is very useful. It's very easy to set up. If you want to really round this out, bring in a reflector or something to add some fill to that shadow side of your subject here in the front area. And if you have a third light, then great, you can use that third light. And speaking of a third light, the next setup I want to talk about is the popular 3-point lighting setup. Now, this is very traditional. It's extremely versatile, and it's going to give you those professional looks, whether you're shooting, stills or video. All right, this is just something that everyone should know about. It's a very common lighting scenario. All right, and there's different ways to do it, but I'll tell you how I do it. We're going to start with, again, we're going to start with that key light over here on one side into the front of your subject. We've got that second light as our fill light, and we have our third light as a hair light. Now, if you want to really get into the details and specifics of how the 3-point lighting setup works, I've got a very old video that you can check out. I'll go ahead and link to it here and in the description below. Go ahead and check that out. But for now, let me just give you an overview of this and how it works, and I think this will get you off to a good start. So you start with your key light in your 45-45 portrait lighting position, or something similar to that. Your second light is going to be your fill light, and your third light is going to serve as a hair light. Now, you've got 3 lights to work with, so there's a lot of different things that you can do. There's no hard and fast rules. For example, you can use that hair light, that third light, can you bring it down a little bit. You can kind of use it as a hair light, rim light combo, right? Instead of using an actual light for your fill light, maybe you'll bring in a reflector and you'll take that second light and move it over to the background. You might want to put some light there in the background, right? So you can do that. So there's really, if you've got 3 lights to work with, there's a whole lot of things you can do, but traditionally, as I've described it, that's what it's for. You've got your key light, which is your main modeling portrait light, which defines your subject. You've got your fill light, and you have a hair light. All right, so not to beat a dead horse, it's key, fill, and hair light usually. But like I said, don't let that stop you from trying out different things. Anyway, so those are the 4 portrait lighting setups that I think you really should know. Some of them can be a little complex, but look, I know that you can do this. You just start with the 1 light. Get really good at using that 1 light, then move on to the 2 light thing, do the cross lighting, try the fill lighting, try those things. Just get a good feel for that stuff, and then move on to the 3-point lighting. Look, the more you practice, the better you're going to get. Something that seemed just out of reach when you start out, trust me, just keep trying. You're going to get really good at this, and you're going to surprise yourself. One of these days, you're going to say, wow, I did it. I actually pulled off 3-point lighting. Man, to be honest with you, when I pulled off a good 1 light portraiture, I was happy. So yeah, you bring in another light, you learn to use that, you learn to mix them, you learn to get the ratios you want, whether it's by some formula or whether it's just by, you do it to your liking, and you just practice, you get better at it, and you're going to surprise yourself. So hey, I hope you liked this video. I hope it gave you some good tips, and if you did like this video, go ahead and click that like button. Definitely leave me some comments. I love reading your comments. I love responding to them. If you haven't already, go ahead and click subscribe. I want to thank you for hanging out with me today. I really appreciate it, and as always, I'll see you next time.